Mr. Riley is the CEO, President, and Director of Biologics. He has more than 20 years of experience in the biotechnology and pharmaceutical industries, during which he negotiated numerous worldwide strategic corporate alliances, established joint ventures, and assisted in obtaining venture financings to support product development. Most recently, he served as Managing Director of 526 Ventures. Mr. Riley?
Thank you, Tatiana. So we have 20 minutes. I'm going to rip through this presentation fairly quickly. If you guys have any questions thereafter, please track us down. I have both our Chief Financial Officer here as well as our Chief Science Officer. So again, the name of the company is Synthetic Biologics. We are listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Our ticker symbol is SYN. We are public, so we will try and avoid any forward-looking statements if we can. So our investment proposition, who are we, what do we do? We are a therapeutics-focused company. We have drugs. I'll go through each one of those drugs. 2 are in phase 2, and then we have a preclinical stage drug as well as some discovery stage products, and I'll go through those. In addition, we have a collaboration with a privately held company called Intrexon Corporation, which is run and controlled by a guy named Randall J. Kirk, and Mr. Kirk and his company are basically our discovery engine for our earlier stage products. So the management team, I am Jeff Riley, CEO of this company. Half my career was in the big pharma side, the other half has been in the private biotech and venture side of the equation. Mr. Ballantyne, who's with us today, was the Chief Financial Officer for Clinical Data. That was another R.J. Kirk company. That company was acquired in 2011 for $1.3 billion plus another $300 million in CVRs. Dr. John Monahan is with us as well today. John was the founder and CEO for over 10 years of a public company called Avogen, which focused on gene therapy, reached $1 billion plus in market cap. Really, really nice company. Had some background at Roche as well as a research scientist and director. Dr. Carol Reed, you can see she's also has a clinical data background. That ticker symbol at that time, by the way, was CLDA, and she was responsible for all clinical development of vilazodone, which was a drug that ended up going through NDA and being acquired by Forest Labs. And then Dr. Mike Calico worked at Novartis, and he is our head of science and discovery operations. So here's the product pipeline. We have a drug. It is an oral estriol product. I'll go through it a little bit. This drug is in the middle of a phase 2, well, 3/4 of the way through a phase 2 trial. It's a 2-year trial. We're coming up on month 18 at this point in time, and we'll have data early next year. And this is, again, for relapsing, remitting multiple sclerosis. We also have a drug for Clostridium difficile. This is an infectious disease indication. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then we have an earlier stage product that is pertussis, and then an even earlier stage product which is a monoclonal antibody program against gram-negative bacterium. So our first program, estriol, very, very interesting program. Again, this is in phase 2. This program actually evolved from being a physiologically observed phenomenon in women that would get pregnant. And what would happen is these women would have multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, a variety of autoimmune diseases. In their 3rd trimester, a lot of those symptoms of those diseases would disappear. So kind of cool. So the physicians noted, 50, 60, 70 years ago, what the devil was happening. That was really pretty interesting. Over the last 20 years, diagnostics technologies caught up to where we were able to figure out what was happening. And what was occurring was the placenta was creating in the 3rd trimester and a little ways afterwards, the following 3 months postpartum, that it was producing a female hormone called estriol. Estriol itself is a very weak binding, weak affinity molecule, and has been used for over 40 years in Europe for postmenopausal syndrome. It is not available in the United States today. So we're going after relapsing remitting MS. That's the indication, that's the endpoint that is common in this disease state. This is an oral product. It's an 8 milligram pill taken once per day. Our current trial is with Copaxone, which is the Teva product. And we are looking forward to the first half of next year when we'll get results for this program. Last patient will be dosed in January of 2014. We have a collaboration with the primary investigator named Dr. Rhonda Voskuil out of UCLA, and she's one of the premier folks in this space that knows MS exceptionally well. In addition, if you'll see the little logos at the top of the slide, this program was completely funded, the entire phase 2 program, to the tune of $8 million in non-dilutive capital by the MS Foundation, MS Society, etc. So the market's a gigantic market, $14 billion plus. You got the quintessential pie chart there. The red piece of that pie chart is the drug from Teva, and that is the drug that we are doing our trials with in combination at this point in time. We do have a use patent on this particular drug. We also have, as you can see on the third bullet point, a U.S. patent that was issued a couple of months ago, which is for use in combination with Copaxone, so with the Teva product. Keep in mind that the Teva product goes off of patent in 2015, and that's going to cause a fair number of issues for them, since that is a $4 billion market and a fairly hefty revenue stream for that company. The company, in its current form as Synthetic Biologics, has been around for a little over a year. And when we came into the company, the current management team, we looked at what disease states do we want to focus on going forward. We had a drug for MS that was what we considered a legacy program. It's also a small molecule. So we looked at other CNS disorders, we looked at cancer, we looked at a variety of areas, and we ended up choosing infectious disease and specifically anti-infectives or antibiotics as an area to focus on. Why? Because there have not been a lot of new antibiotics current in the last 15 to 20 years coming out into the marketplace. There's a lot of new fluoroquinolones, new penicillins, new cephalosporins, but at the end of the day, the mechanism of action for those remains relatively similar. That's a bit of a problem because resistance is building up in bacterium over time, and a lot of these drugs no longer work effectively. So this is a little, the little pie chart that, or the little chart that we put together, kind of with the way that we thought about how do we go after this particular area, and why have companies not invested heavily in this, especially the big pharmas, over the last 15, 20 years. The reason, it did not make pharmacoeconomic sense to do that. So the NPVs, when they would look at a project, usually came out negative, so they rather allocated capital to orphan drug diseases such as cancer and a variety of other areas. So what happened in July of last year, President Obama signed into law the thing called the GAIN Act, and the GAIN Act is, in simplistic terms, sort of an orphan drug set of legislation specific to the antibiotic development world. So you get market exclusivity on the back end, you get fast track status with the FDA, and there's just a lot more clarity on how to take that product forward. So our first product out of the gates is for a disease state called C. diff, or Clostridium difficile. This is a nasty little bug, almost always acquired in the hospital environment. This particular bug lives in your intestinal tract as in part of your microbiome. You can also contract it outside of that, but it typically is inside of your microbiome in your intestinal tract. This little guy causes over $8.2 billion in damage in the United States alone annually. And 30,000 folks die from this particular disease state. How do you get it? You go into a hospital, hip replacement, knee replacement, whatever it happens to be, pneumonia, you get IV antibiotics. That's standard course of care. So they give you an IV antibiotic, it starts doing its job and taking out whatever that bacterium is that you want to remove. It eventually, however, has to get out of your system. So it goes through your biliary tract to some extent and eventually gets excreted into your intestinal tract, your upper GI tract, and there it does damage. These are again called broad spectrum antibiotics, which means they kill everything. If it's a bacterium, it's going to generally try and kill it. It wipes out the majority of the bacterium in your gut and causes an imbalance. C. diff is one of those bacteria. These are tough little guys and they grow out of control. That's what causes the problem. Current therapy for this is more antibiotics. So if you get this problem in the hospital, you're going to spend 5 to 7 extra days in the hospital in isolation while they try and kill off these nasty little guys. Our drug works differently. Our drug is a protein, specifically an enzyme. It's a beta-lactamase. And what you do is you take our pill, it's a 56 milligram oral dose. You swallow the pill the same time you get on antibiotics. It goes through your system and eventually gets released in your upper GI tract where our protein just sits there. No systemic exposure, no side effects, no problems at this stage of the game. As the antibiotics are excreted into your upper GI tract, our drug breaks down those antibiotics. So renders those inert so they have absolutely no negative effect on your microbiome. Very simple, elegant, clean way of taking care of this particular problem. Where are we in development with this particular drug? This drug has been all the way through a phase 2B in Europe. We acquired the program late last year, and we're in the process of getting cGMP manufacturing and E. coli lines up and running. We should have that done by year end. Discussions with the FDA have indicated we have to do one bridging tox study, roughly about a month long, a 28-day dog tox study, and then we'll jump right back into the clinic. So we feel, again, very confident that we'll be in the clinic next year and should probably have POC data by the third or fourth quarter of next year as well. Our third program that we have internally is an earlier stage program. This is for pertussis, or what is known as whooping cough. Whooping cough, believe it or not, is a growing problem in the United States. It's always been a huge issue outside the U.S. As you can see from my slide, over 300,000 babies die from this worldwide. Big problem. Why is it a problem? Because what happens is you can kill the bacterium, the pertussis bacterium, off fairly easily using antibiotics, but they release toxoids. Those toxoids ends up staying in your system for up to 100 days. So one of the names for this disease is a 100-day cough. They tend to congregate in the tracheal area, and if you're an infant or very old individual, that sometimes can cause asphyxiation and death. So a huge problem outside the United States, and a growing problem in the U.S. due to the lack of vaccinations currently. For a variety of reasons. So again, our drug is a humanized monoclonal antibody. This is a collaboration between the University of Texas and Intrexon, and we'll be going into non-human primate models toward the end of this year, and then we'll be going into the clinic again next year with this particular program. Last but not least is another nasty gram-negative bug. This is an earlier stage discovery program, again with Intrexon Corporation as our discovery engine. We're going after a very focused monoclonal antibody approach to taking out Acinetobacter baumannii. This is one of the most notorious bugs out there with respect to being acquired in the hospital environment. This little guy came to premonition during the first and second Iraq wars. They can live on a grain of sand at very, very high temperatures for up to 36 days. So soldiers would go into battle, you'd end up getting a trauma or some type of wound, sand would get in the wound, they would get an infection. There were more soldiers evacuated off the battlefield for infection than for the trauma itself. So that basically came to premonition that that was going to be an issue, and they ended up saying, well, we've got to figure out what to do. This is probably a $1 billion product, and it's becoming much more prevalent in the U.S. As you can see, you get about a 43% chance of dying if you get this bug in the hospital. Reason, antibiotics don't work very well. Very, very tough little guy, and they've evolved very rapidly to get around most of the antibiotic mechanisms of actions. So we are working on this particular program, and we hope to have something in animal models and then obviously into the clinic in the next few months, next year or so. Corporate snapshot, market cap's around 80 million bucks, give or take. Current price, I don't know what it is today, but about $1.70, between $1.70 and $1.80. Cap structure super clean. We have no debt, no preferred stock, a minimal amount of warrants at this stage of the game. We had $8.5 million bucks as of the end of the last quarter, and our headquarters is in Rockville, Maryland. So to reiterate what I just said, we have a variety of milestones coming up. So we have 3 programs that will be in the clinic, and we'll be getting data from those 3 programs early to mid next year. The phase 2 drug, the MS drug itself, we'll be getting data for that early next year when the phase 2 trial finishes. Again, that's 164 patients. We're looking very forward to that particular product. Our C. diff program will be going into the clinic next year. These are relatively quick trials. We should have POC data again by the end of next year, if not a bit earlier. Our pertussis program, again, if the non-human primate studies come out well, we'll be going into humans as well, and that would be directly into patients, infants, likely outside of the United States. And then our earlier stage program, again, is an earlier stage program, so discovery is tough to predict where that's going to come out, but we're hopeful in the next year or so that we'll have some antibodies that hit the majority of strains of this bug. And with that, I thank you guys for coming.